to see you again. Welcome back. New people to Tuesday night. Feel free to close that, Sean. It's in your eyes. I was thinking a couple of days ago, it feels like we're about done with the living between two worlds, which is what we've been focused on for the last 10 weeks. So maybe we'll do a little summary of that and the principles that it's based on, since there's some new people here, and we'll see where this group wants to go. It's open for raising hands and asking questions anytime you want to during I usually start out talking a little bit, but if you have a question or you want clarification, please raise your hand and jump in, because this is a workshop. It's a presentation of spiritual principles and truths, hopefully, but it's also a workshop and a clarification. And the other thing to know is that I don't expect anybody to believe anything I say. That's nonsense, believing what somebody else says. You don't believe, you don't experience. What I always hope is that you will hear and understand what I'm saying, and then you'll go out into the world and see whether or not it's your experience. I was listening to one of the Between Two World tapes, and Joel was saying the same thing about faith. He said essentially, faith is the worst thing you can have. He says it just limits you. He says the minute you have faith, then you're believing something with no basis at all except the faith and the fact that people who are more conditioned than you have told you it's true. And, essentially there are 6 billion people who have faith. Some have faith in what they think the Buddhist teaching is, and some have faith in what they think Jesus said, and some have faith in what they think Lao Tzu said. And if you look at it, for everybody who has faith in something, there are at least 4 people who have faith in something that's quite opposite. And so faith is sheer nonsense. So don't have faith. That just limits you. The goal of this is the goal of all the work that happens here at Leelaa is to hear truth and learn truth and discover for yourself whether or not it's free. And when you find out, not if you find out, but when you find out that it's true, then you will get free in that area with respect to that point. Because when you know the truth sets you free. I used to love quoting that. Know the truth, and the truth will set you free, and the truth will set you free from all the false conditioning. So we've been talking about living between two worlds, and the two worlds that we live between are the ones that Jesus talked about. He referred to my kingdom, which is the spiritual world, and he talked about this world, which is the material world. And Joel very quickly points out that there's really only one world, my kingdom, the spiritual world, and that this world is nothing but human concepts about my kingdom. So there's really only one world, and there are 6 billion private experiences of my kingdom is what's going on here. And only the true mystic has a true experience of my kingdom. Everybody else is having an experience of my kingdom that reflects how much mystical consciousness they have and how much human consciousness they have. And the spiritual principles that we've been dealing with for the past 10 or 12 weeks, and for all the workshops here, the first spiritual principle that all this work and all of mysticism is based on is the statement that God is consciousness. And God is consciousness appearing as individual consciousness. And that would be Joel's statement of it. And all the really high mystics make the statement, all there is consciousness. If you get to India, if you get to the Vedantic teachings or any of those, the statement is really simplified to all there is consciousness. But Joel's teaching is a bit more available to those of us who are living between two worlds, who have our feet in the human world and our head in the spiritual world. Feet in the mud and the head in the clouds. So Joel always used the words is and as. God is consciousness appearing as individual consciousness, and all there is consciousness. And this is why he's so clear about the fact that there really is no this world, which is the material world, because there is nothing material. There's just the material concepts of the spiritual world, which is everything. This, by the way, is the basis of... Joel has a book entitled God, the Substance of All Form. And this brings a lot of clarity into what that means. God being spirit is the substance of all form, pointing out that the substance, that the reality of all form, well, by form he means the material appearances, is God, is spirit. So it's all consciousness. It's all images in consciousness, as Joel would say. So that's the first principle. And the second principle is that from the viewpoint of our individual consciousness, what we experience is the outpicturing of the content of our individual consciousness. And of course, that individual consciousness can either be associated with God consciousness and experiencing the presence of God, or it can be in human consciousness and experiencing the human beliefs, these concepts that humanity has about my kingdom. And we all have our own individual experience based on how much of human consciousness we're mired in and how much of God consciousness we're experiencing. And these, by the way, are the part of you that's mired in human consciousness we call kid, and the part of you that's in touch with God consciousness is what we call spiritual adult. And the amount of spiritual adult you have in here means the extent to which in this moment you are aware of the presence of God. The amount of realization you are having of the presence of God now is the amount of spiritual adult you have in here now, and that is what is picturing as your experience. And of course, the part of you that is not experiencing, is not realizing the presence of God now, is still locked up in human consciousness and is experiencing the connection with human consciousness, which we all have because there's really only one human consciousness and we're all connected to it. And so, to the extent that we're still in human consciousness, that is what's outpicturing as our experience. And that's why our experience is so screwy. And what we mean by living between two worlds is that we're in the state where we are sometimes in kid and we're sometimes in spiritual adult. And sometimes when we're in spiritual adult, our experience is one of harmony. And sometimes when we're in kid, our experience is one of terror. And we have the whole range in between. Joel says that the reason there is an infinite way, which is the name of his teaching, is that it was different from Christian Science or any of the other teachings that were available at the time. And the specific way in which it was different is that Joel had the realization that there is no God in the human world. And all the other metaphysical teachings still had a God in the human world and still trying to get God to do things for them and were trying to use their minds to manipulate him and stuff like that. But Joel had the absolute clarity that there is no God in the human world. No God activity in the human world. There's just no God going on there. except to the extent that you as an individual have invited it into your consciousness, and it is outpicturing through your consciousness. And of course this goes for everybody. To the extent that people are letting God into their consciousness, then there is that much God in what appears to be the human experience. Because if you are aware of the presence of God, then those around you will, consciously or subconsciously, become aware of the fact that you are aware of the presence of God. You become a transparency, and it shows. It's in your face. Your face is full of light, or there's something about you, or there's an aura about you. And in the cases where one is a complete transparency, the results are awesome. And we call people like that Jesus and Buddha and Lao Tzu and Krishna and all the amazing masters. But so the only God there is in the human experience is the amount of God that is brought into the human experience through individual consciousnesses which are experiencing God and being a transparency. So those are probably our three important principles that all of this work rests on. This is all the healing principles and everything else that we talk about rests on these three principles essentially. So now the two worlds are my experience as a result of the part of me that's in human consciousness and my experience when I'm in God consciousness. And as I ping pong, I'm living between two worlds, and that's what we're talking about, because that's what all of us are doing, is having high moments and unhappy, or shall we say discordant moments, and the full range in between. Now the other thing we talked about is knowing this and knowing, realizing what, or understanding intellectually even what I just said, and realizing that this world is just the human concept of my kingdom and that the reality is my kingdom, we sort of learn our first step of discipline in living between two worlds, which is that when there's something disharmonious in our experience, we can say immediately, uh-oh, that must be human consciousness, because it's not my kingdom, because my kingdom is harmonious. So we can use disharmony of any sort to remind us that we are currently, to that extent that we're seeing this disharmony in human consciousness, in kid. And it might remind us to take a minute and do a little bit of meditation and try to get back into God consciousness. And if you do get to the actual realization of the presence of God, the picture will change. It just must change. It dissolves. Disharmony dissolves in the presence of God. So that's sort of one thing that we learn to do. The next stage is realizing that if you see something really good or something healthy or somebody rich or something like that, it's a sign that you're in kid. Even though there's not any terror about it, nonetheless you're seeing something material and you're labeling it as good. And if you're seeing something as good, you are in duality. And where there's good, there must be evil. So the coin will flip. This is why Buddha said that being human is suffering, because if you're having a good experience, along with the good comes the fear that you'll lose it. And if you are not having a good experience, there's the fear that you'll never have it. So that no matter where you're at, having it or not having it, you're nonetheless in the human dilemma, the dualism of suffering and afraid you'll lose it, and there's fear underlying it all. So So we learn as our next step to try to recognize that when we're labeling things as good, that's an indication that we're in this world. Because see, we're labeling something in this world as good. You see that? We're labeling some material thing as good. Oh, he's healthy, that's good. Or, oh, he's got enough money for this, that's good. You know, we're labeling material things as good. So, a better approach, or not a better approach, these two stages have to be gone through, and probably the third stage is to become aware that all of your desires are for things material. All of your desires, with the exception of desiring the experience of the presence of God, are for things material. Okay? And so we can learn to use desiring something, wanting something to be a particular way, as another trigger to remind us that we need to get into God consciousness and see the truth about this, because if you were in God consciousness, how could you possibly desire something, since you would have and be everything? So the next stage, the third stage, is to use desires as the trigger. Then you can move to a practice that Joel recommends, which is that whenever you begin anything, you do a little meditation and invite the presence of God into you. Every time you walk out the door, or every time you get into your car, or every time you get out of your car, or every time, and that, by the way, is the reason we hold the meditation at the start of this class, and everything we do here we start with the meditation. I invite God into my experience. And I hope you are all inviting God into your experience, and if so, then there will be communication of one to itself, and the understanding will be much clearer, and the class will be much higher because the understanding is higher. So that's the real reason that we get quiet, and I listen for the real silence to hit, because at that time we're one. Okay? So that would be the next thing that you would like to do, is before you begin anything, invite God consciousness into your consciousness so that it will outfit you.
So Lee, that's to clarify. So at times when I'm observing, which results in a judgment, that usually indicates I'm a kid?
Absolutely. Or inhuman. You're inhuman. I mean, it depends on how we use the word kid. Sometimes we use kid as the particularly terror-stricken, childish aspects of it, but that means you're in human consciousness. Yeah. If you're in God consciousness, there is no judgment. Everything is perfect. Joel, Robert says everything is unfolding exactly as it should. It's all perfect. There is no disharmony in God consciousness. So any judgment at all is certainly human. And let me just take the one more step, and then we're done with this kind of thought. Even beyond beginning everything by inviting God into my consciousness, is that when I then walk into a situation, consciously trying to see the God that I know is the God that I know is your consciousness. Okay? So what I want to do is not only have God in my consciousness, but I want to see the God in your consciousness and be aware of that. And that is the step that brings to, well, that's sort of a high step in this path of living a perfectly harmonious, having a perfectly harmonious human experience. What did you have, Kathy?
Well, when you said about judgment, I remember in, I think it's in the relationship class, we were learning about evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So is that still a human, that's more adult or God conscious, or just whether something's effective or not?
It's a higher thing, but still, I mean, what are we judging, whether it's effective or not? We're judging a human behavior. If you're in God consciousness, you're not thinking. You know, I've been passing on to a few of my people the expression, "This doesn't require my thought," for people who have their mind buzzing on whether, how this is going to turn out or something, and this is a discipline I used for a while. When my head cranks up with trying to figure out something, I just say, "This doesn't require our thought." And then I say, "Nothing does." And you can say that no matter what your head is worried about. This doesn't require our thought. And this is getting towards the silent mind, see, and we're not even evaluating what's effective. If you are completely quiet, it's fine. If you're completely quiet and you are fully aware of the presence of God, and there's no human consciousness that you're linked to at the moment, then it will all be taken care of. This is where Robert talks about the power that knows the way, or Joel talks about, it goes before you to make the crooked places straight. This is that kind of an experience where everything happens. And what this really is your consciousness out-picturing. Joel talks about God going before you to make the crooked places straight, but what's really happening is that your consciousness is a consciousness that can only experience harmony. And since it can only experience harmony, the picture has to reflect harmonious things. And so the people that are required to make your life harmonious show up, and the people that need to get out of the picture so that your life can be harmonious disappear. And it's the opposite of attracting your needle when you're radiating your script. Okay, you radiate your script and you attract your needle. When you're radiating God, you attract the people that will make your life harmonious and fulfilling, and they will come to you and bring you the things you need. And and the whole thing works. And when you're in this position, the question of effective doesn't really matter much.
What if no one shows up?
Then you're not in that consciousness. Or,
what if you don't like me and people that show up?
Then you're not in that consciousness. Then you're a kid.
That went away if it happened.
Then you're a kid. Not liking people means you're a kid. You're clearly not seeing...
Well, they stayed around and I started liking them.
But you're not seeing the fact that that individual consciousness is also just the presence of God. If you're having any question about liking and disliking, you're seeing human beings.
Well, what happened was I just hated everybody because I was doing all that work. Mm-hmm. And so I had 50 billion people calling me, and I was being tugged in 5 different directions. I did this work. I stopped doing that. Everyone disappeared. Mm-hmm. But the tricklers, I was so angry, and the tricklers stayed. Mm-hmm. Well, they're still here 3 years later. Mm-hmm. And now I understand why they stayed. But,
sure. Just your consciousness out-picturing. That's all it is. Do you get the sense about how practical mysticism is? People think of mysticism as something really weird and impractical and way out in left field and absolutely a waste of time, and you should probably be a hermit to be a mystic. And it's really far out and weird and strange. And Joel makes the point, and you'll have to agree with him, that being a mystic is by far the most practical way to live life. First of all, in my human relationships, if I am experiencing the presence of God and seeing the presence of God in you, and you're experiencing the presence of God and seeing the presence of God in me, then we have an amazing level of communication, and neither of us wants anything from the other person or needs anything from the other person. We are absolutely aware of our complete, total self-integrity. We're absolutely aware of our complete independence. We're aware of our mutual equality, where all this stuff that I'm aware of about me, I'm aware of about you, so there's absolute equality, and the relationship is harmonious. It doesn't even begin to touch how that relationship is. So, being a stoned out mystic is by far the most practical way to run your relationships. And as far as dealing with other people, if I'm always aware of who I am and who you are, then I want nothing from you. You don't have anything I want. There isn't anything I want. There isn't anything I need. And I'm not jealous of anything about you. I don't want anything you have. I don't need anything you have. I have absolutely no requirements of you. As Joel pointed out, if I give you something, I don't even want your thanks, because I know that I didn't give it to you, that God gave it to you through me as the transparency, and so I don't even want thanks. So I have absolutely no expectations of you, and I have you absolutely free to be whoever you are. And this too is a very practical way to live a life, because it frees you up to be who you are, and you will grow and blossom and be who you are when you're around me, at least. And I don't much care how you act when you're not around me, but when you're around me, you'll be a totally different person than you are with anybody else.
That brings something up that I was thinking on the way over here. Because what I was thinking is, if I was to go to a nightclub with you or Mickey, who would I want to go with? And which has nothing to do with anything, but Mickey and I used to always go to Lighthouse and dance around and stuff. And he is like a little kid running around, knocking things over in that house and stuff. But it's fun, and someone was looking at, he was sharing one day, and I was looking at him like with admiration, and they're going, Sean, you just wish, that he just takes the attention off you. And it was really, I was looking at that guy really just is wacky, crazy, and doesn't care what others think about him. But I'm wondering, is he a kid or is he just a child? And it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But it's just sure fun to be around him.
Okay.
So when I'm around, and then I had this guy that hit me in the head with a baseball bat. He shows up at my door the other day. In my apartment, I was sleeping with my apartment door open because it was hot. And he's like, dude, let's go get drunk. Let's go to Hollywood. And I'm like, bro, I'm just laying down. And then he goes in and he goes, sure is peaceful in here. And then he left. And he wrote crackhead on my window and put the arrow down on my couch. So I'm wondering, am I attracting these people like this, or is that what I'm attracting people like? I don't ask him to come over; he just shows up.
Well, it depends. And you don't ask people to read your script; they just show up. And you don't ask gurus to appear in your life; they just show up. So you're attracting everything in your life. It may be that he's there to read your script, or it may be that he's there so that you can recognize the God in him. Who knows what his experience of you is?
I wasn't emotional when he came by, but he went, it sure is peaceful. That might have been the message. It was like, wow, you sure have changed, because he and I used to smoke rocks, and now, he comes by my house.
He may, when you have developed the habit of going everywhere, letting God in before you go out, then, and looking for God in the other people, whether or not they're willing to reveal it to you, and it may take a while before they do, still, the reason they're coming to you when they come up to you is because the God within them recognizes that the God within you is out, and the God within them wants to be seen. That's to light the candle inside of them, to start their own process. So the more light you're showing, the more people will come to you to have their Christ or their Buddha mind recognized. And that becomes part of what we do. By the way.
I'm just aware of all this list of things that you don't do if you're seeing the Christ in someone. Like, you're not trying to fix them. You're not in judgment of them. You're not trying to give them something.
Mm-hmm.
You're not believing any of the appearances.
Nothing needs to be done.
Nothing needs to be done.
Nothing needs to be changed. Nobody needs to be healed. Right. That's exactly right. And in fact, there's no one to do anything. I mean, if you do want to, if you do see some lack in them and want to fix it, guess what? You're not in the God consciousness anymore. In fact, you're back in human consciousness and you're dealing with material problems. You've dropped out of your God consciousness. When you're in the God consciousness, there's really, you're a transparency. And your body may, in fact, go through all sorts of motions, like putting the tourniquet on them and tying off the spurting arterial bleeding and sewing up the wound and doing all sorts of stuff like that, and doing the things that appear to be life-saving, let's say, if you happen to have wandered by an accident. And I'm sure Robert would do that if he saw an accident. You do that sort of stuff. But it's not you doing it. What's happening is it's happening because it was supposed to happen then. Not even you. That's sort of like the sixth step in that step of 5 things I gave you, or the fifth one is that now that you've got God in consciousness every time you go out, and you're recognizing God consciousness in everybody else, the sixth step is, but if you think you're doing that, you're not done yet. Because if you have a sense, to the sense that you have a sense of doing that, you're still between two worlds.
I'm sorry, sense of doing.
Because you're like a spiritual progress.
To the extent that you have a sense of being in God consciousness, you're in human consciousness.
Because you're thinking about it.
Yes. Because there's a you. You're saying, I am in God consciousness, and that I that you think is in God consciousness is the little I. Guess what? Because the I that the big I is never in God consciousness. The big I is God consciousness. And it doesn't go around talking about I'm in God consciousness. So if you think you're in God consciousness, well, and you may be pretty clear and pretty high, and you may be having a wonderful experience, and you may have nothing going on except awareness of the presence of God and this little thought back in that says, wow, I'm really in God consciousness now, and that's cool. That's lovely. Wonderful place to be. Laugh at it, chuckle, snicker, still there,
Tell somebody.
Yeah, right. And there's actually nothing wrong with that. That too is a stage, that's quite a high stage. I just wanted to add, since this is sort of a summation and a wrap up and everything of all of this, remember that if there's a you, that's not quite done, not quite cooked, as Robert would say.
But I have a question related to scripts. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah. It's a spiritual workshop.
If I'm, say I'm at my apartment. Well, say I'm at the office. And someone walks in the office. Someone walks in the office in a bad mood. Mm-hmm. If I, quote unquote, pick up on his mood, am I on a script? I mean, no one can set me off, right? It's something that's coming in me.
If you pick up on his bad mood and get in a bad mood, then you're a kid. I don't know whether it's a script or not. If you have an emotional reaction to his bad mood, you're in script.
Okay.
You were saying that we behave differently when we're around you. No.
I said if I were in that consciousness, you would behave differently.
Which is cool and game. Because the guy in the meeting this morning said, no one's happy all the time. I mean, who really wants to be happy all the time? And then you and I looked at each other. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I sure do.
And so I was at church one time, and this guy says, when you come to church, you behave differently, not smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, yeah, right, I'm Mr. Cool. But then I started thinking about it. When I go to a church, I don't, I'm like, should I tell this joke or not? Because I got really disgusting jokes, right? So I'm thinking differently. And so when I'm around a higher level of consciousness, my thinking just immediately changes.
That's right, you change, Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The fact is that if you're around a really high consciousness, well, you won't. First of all, anything you do would not be seen as discordant, but also your activities as far as others are concerned will be considerably less discordant. Yep, that's what we're talking about. And churches that have a minister who really has a consciousness, then the fact that they get there every Sunday and they sit down and have a meditation and have and get into his consciousness, and that goes on for a while. That gets left in the church. You can walk in a cold church that nobody's in there, and you can feel the silence. If you can feel the silence, it says something good about the main man of the church. But some churches you walk into and, whoa, this is nice, Have you felt that walking into certain churches? And other churches, of course, it's not there at all. So it can happen just walking into a building. We've been meditating here so many nights, so many years, that this house is quiet.
That's what happened in my house when the guy walked by and looked in.
Yeah.
I don't think he saw that it was clean.
No, but you do a lot of meditating there, and it's there, so to speak.
A little bit.
I probably would always say. No, if the guy saw it was there, he didn't make that up. He didn't know you'd been meditating. He felt it. It's good.
There's a reading, 12 and 12. It says it's a spiritual axiom that when we're uncomfortable, there's something wrong with us. So I'm assuming that us would be human consciousness. And then, so our out-picturing, the spiritual axiom we do here is that the universe is our out-picturing. So, when I was really doing a lot of meditation, I was a lot more clear. It's just, I get into the fantasy and to the script and to the humanhood. I fell back into it. It's not as strong now, but how do you stay in that forever? Is that just a mystic? I don't know what a mysticism is. I don't know what a mystic is.
A mystic is a person who is in that moment experiencing the presence of God, realizing the presence of God.
at all times, or just one moment?
At the moment that he is having that realization, he is having a mystical experience. And a mystic is one who has mystical experiences.
So we could be all mystics.
So you're a mystic. Yeah, we're all mystics. And we're working at being mystics. We're working at discovering a practical way of living. Mysticism. Living between two worlds is all about the fact that we don't stay in that high consciousness, but people do. Robert was always in the high consciousness. But there is a level of realization which is so complete that the idea that there is an individual, that there is a little I, is completely annihilated.
I'm sorry, what is that? What?
Is completely annihilated.
What's annihilated?
The idea that there is a little I.
A little I.
If there ever was a little I, that there was. The individual, the idea of an individual entity and individual consciousness, the whole idea of individual consciousness, in fact the idea of spiritual adult went with that because that's still part of the ego, body, mind thing. The idea that there is such an individual is completely annihilated. It's just gone. That happened to Robert. And so there's no possibility of living between two worlds because the one that lives in the human world isn't there. There's no personal sense. We could say that the one who lives in the human world, in this world, is personal sense. The sense of being a person as separate from God. And in Robert and in the completely cooked mysteries, there is no personal sense.
Right. I mean, not this marriage, but just to hear myself speak. Robert, I assume like Robert wasn't an effort at that point. Whatever state he achieved, he wasn't trying to be there. He was just there, right?
Right. There was no one to try.
So this idea of trying to, don't we, the minute we try to get more conscious or try, we're already missing the point?
Yes, trying prevents it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And yet we have to, depending on what level you're at, you have to start at beginners, the peers need to develop some sort of spiritual practice, okay? And some spiritual discipline. Or they're not going to have that experience, and I don't know whether you would call developing a spiritual practice, trying.
Right.
But, certainly discipline is a good thing to develop at one stage of your thing, but trying to be enlightened is absolutely guaranteed to prevent it. Because the one who is trying to become enlightened is the problem.
Right.
As long as that one exists, you're not enlightened.
It's changing your mind with your mind, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one who's trying to become enlightened is the reason that you're not enlightened.
Right.
And then trying not to try and still trying.
That's right, no? Yeah. Dropping it is different from trying or trying not to try. Just dropping it. This doesn't require my thought. This doesn't require my effort. This doesn't require me. Just dropping it, It's the hardest thing to do, but just drop it. Don't try to stop your mind. Just watch it.
So if there's someone in your life who seems to keep pulling you back into that, that total human sense, and there's someone who, you feel like it's fine, it's okay, and then this one person, repeatedly, you're right there and you're into judgment and they're not doing it right and they need to, and there's emotion, but not any identifiable script. It's just really frustrating. Like, there's someone that I'll listen to Robert, I'll read a line of Robert before I pick up the phone with this person.
Good.
I do all the stuff that I know, and I pick up the phone and feel like something. And I'm always aware of, look who's trying. Someone obviously feels like they have to fix, change it, whatever.
Yep.
And it doesn't change. I keep doing the drill. But there are others who call me, and it's, I work with others, and I know they're fine. I know they're perfectly fine, but this person I forget, and then when the phone rings.
They're just a really good actress.
Isn't it
art well?
Yeah, but
Maybe there's one.
they're a great teacher or something for me in this.
Yeah, I mean, to that extent,
Consistently.
I mean, if you had no concepts, that couldn't happen.
Like, I think I'm a fake adult trying to deal with this person because I do, yeah. A fake adult comes out and decides she's fine, it's all good, she's cool, she's right where she needs to be. And I pick up the phone and I'm instantly aware that she needs to do a few things differently. And yet I'm watching myself, oh, this isn't adult, is it?
Yeah,
So it's a game going on of trying to,
and that's great.
trying to just practice restraint of tongue around.
Yeah, and that's fine. And the fact is that if you're watching it happen, that means that the witness is in fact in gear.
I watch it happen, and I'm right to my kid. You don't have to fix it. There's nothing to fix.
See, so all the flavors are there.
It doesn't feel like it changes.
You've got the adult, you've got the kid, and you've got the witness watching it. And if you probably dropped all concern about it, I don't mean about the person too, but if you dropped all concern about the fact that you still have this needle, and dropped all concern about the fact that you still have the kid who worried about it, and just dropped all concern about everything, then it wouldn't matter so much, and that might be the thing that's sustaining it, for example.
I see that. Because I see that there's judgment of myself for not being able to get past this.
Yep. And also you have a concept that she's going to do this to you.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
I mean, who's going to show up today doesn't really work a lot, is it? I try whatever words I hear here, but I wonder who's going to be on the other end. Before I get to the end of the sentence, I wonder who's going to be on the other end of the phone. Like in the relationship class, before I said the last word of it, it's like, well, I know who's going to show up.
So, the next time,
Just like solid.
the next time the phone call rings, my train of thought. What you want to do is thank this opportunity for showing up to do some kid work. Instead of being concerned about her at all and whether she's doing it right or she's doing it wrong or not, thank her for showing up and giving you the opportunity to work with your kid and observe this whole process and watch the process without any thought about how you should deal with it or anything at all. Just can you get more into that witness and just watch the whole scenario? Because it's just in the Leelaa and it's really kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
She's dancing and your kid's dancing and your kid acting like an adult is dancing and the witness is watching and
Awful busy.
Can you pull your energy away from it completely?
Yeah, that dropping idea.
Drop all
Sounds right.
Drop all concern.
There's no effort.
What I'm playing is, if I could just see the screen at the same time, then I would have that all as well. If I just knew that there was a screen behind the movie playing.
Sorry. People always say happy, joyous, and free in AA. But really it goes in point here, because what that text really says is, we know God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free, but if trouble comes, cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity for Him to show His omnipotence. And that's a really great thing, because what Lee's saying is, and I've never seen anyone cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity, but the joy comes in the opportunity.
You said something tonight I don't think I heard you say before,
Or maybe you did and it just didn't go in.
I'm not repeating myself.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you said it in some context, but I don't remember hearing it. Anyway.
Probably said the opposite, too.
You said something about to the extent that we can, ask for the ability to see God in the other people. Is that a good exercise to, when you're walking into a situation that's, maybe like what Dad's talking about, but I can think of a lot of instances where I'm like going to have family, whatever, and do meditation and ask to be able to see the God in them as opposed to, like who's going to show up, but ask to see the God that's going to show up.
Don't ask to. Do it.
Just do it, okay.
Yeah. Let God in your invite God consciousness in. Open yourself up to the experience of God. Okay, that's always the first step, and we start out by doing the discipline. Reaching for it or whatever. Praying, that's the one legitimate thing you can pray for, is God to be in the experience of God to be in your life. But reach for the experience of your life, and if you do that enough, you'll get it. You'll be able to feel the experience of God. We talked, I think, about the peace of God that passes all understanding descending upon you. There's a presence. So what you want to do is reach for the presence, okay? And then you already, you won a whole lot of the battle. And now in that presence, if you can just remember to look for that in the other people, they will respond to that. They will. It's just back to the old thing about you walk into a room full of angry people, if you feel the anger, you walk in a room full of depressed people, and you feel the depression. If you take the presence of God into a room and you're looking for their God will come out because it wants to be seen. Okay? It may not happen the first time, it may not happen the 50th time, but it will happen. It must happen. You're becoming their guru, essentially. You're now representing what the real guru in the center of them wants to bring them to the presence of God, right? And here you are saying, hey, over here, God! And whatever's in the center of them is going to certainly, want to come out and want to be seen. And that's what I mean by people, as you get higher, more people will come to you, and what they really want is for their God to be discovered. They want the God within them to become revealed, because it does you no good for me to be aware of the God within me. What works for you is the extent to which you're aware of the God in you. How much God there is in your life is how much God within you're aware of. Okay? And it makes no difference to you at all how harmonious my life looks. It just might really piss you off. My life looks so harmonious,
I've been having a really cool experience with there's been scripts pertaining to scripts where it was like really trying not to be manipulated into reading other people's scripts. And it's not like I'm making an effort not to read this word. I'm making an effort just to, there's this day where my sister was just raging all over the place. And I just kept telling myself, I'm not going to get caught into it. Got caught into it. And a couple times I had to take a deep breath because I wanted, she was just having this meltdown. And I just kept, staying out of it. And then I just thought to myself, just send her love. And the amazing thing was, I said something to her, because she was in script. She was having this temper tantrum. And I said this, I don't know what made me say what I said, but I just said, I just think this is great that you're doing this. And everything about it just, it was like I was telling her script's not true.
That's
even
right.
though,
Exactly what it was.
Yeah.
You told her that her script wasn't true.
Yeah.
That's the most loving thing you can do to a person who's in script.
Right. Like I didn't say, what's her script, try to figure it out, blah, blah, blah. It just came out because it was amazing. She talked about it for days. She said it to her, I was so upset. And then what she said to me just took it all away. And I was like, and I've had it with in other situations. And, it's mostly just like, okay, don't fall into it. But, I don't.
That's it. That's the God in you. See, in the situation. See, if you don't think about it, you'll know what to do.
Yeah.
I trust that in me most of the time. Like especially in class, when we're doing script class. Some people will talk about a script event, and I'll really point at something, well, where are you on accepting responsibility for it, okay? And other people will share about something and they're struggling. There was a case that I'm thinking of in particular where the person was struggling just to share and and using some of the words wrong. And at the end of the share, I just immediately said, great, good work, and went on to the next person instead of even correcting the terminology or anything, because it would have been such a huge, you're not doing it right. Script read. Right. And I knew it, but the reason I knew it is not because I figured it out. The reason I knew it is because I went on. Gotcha. And if she hadn't had that script going on, I would have corrected her, pointed that out, just so that nobody, because, if somebody misuses a term, right, I don't want the rest of the class to hear it misused and think that maybe it was right. So I need to pick up on that stuff usually. But, that kind of thing happens, and you were doing the right thing. And sometimes you'll say exactly the right thing.
Two questions. She's big adult. Did she make that up? And I'm not saying anything.
No, kids
Okay,
kids will often try to.
They're just still kids, just posing.
Yeah, a kid will often try to act like an adult.
I got you. Because big adult, I never read that anywhere. Maybe I did. I just forgot.
Holier than thou.
And then witness.
Is a kid trying to act like an adult. Look how.
What about witness? Where did that come from? You said that.
That's
just so I can get some context.
Yeah, that's not in the script context. Witness is.
Watching.
We start out by thinking we start out totally identified with the body-mind phenomenon, okay? And as long as you really think you're the body and the mind, you're totally identified with that. It's not who you are at all, but if you're totally identified with that, then you're on the way down the pike, and there's nothing you can do about it. At some point, you begin to doubt about this, and at some point, you actually have the ability to be looking at your body and your mind. Okay? And that's the witnessing consciousness. That's the first level of witnessing consciousness, where you're watching your body and your mind. Okay, and you have separation.
Right. I watched myself watch a movie.
Yeah. Watching yourself. Watching yourself in script. In fact, that's the first thing we try to do in script managing script event is trying to get you to witness the script event. Yeah. Oh, it's script. Now, there's my script, and here I am. And it's like I'm separate from this. So that's the first level of witnessing.
I do that. I just needed to talk.
Yeah, there are at least two more levels of witnessing. There are two higher witnesses than that, but that's the first level of witnessing that we all here have experience with, I suspect. You can also witness yourself witnessing. Right? The witness is in your consciousness, but you can witness your consciousness. Right? That feels finished. Let's just be quiet for a few minutes because we're really getting good at being quiet. Thanks for coming. I love you all.